Welcome to Meet the Candidates 2022, a voter education program brought to you by the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce. My name is Tim Zunker, and I'm the president with the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Our hope is that these candidate interviews and profiles will help you, the voter, understand your choices when it comes to the 2022 elections. We ask voters to arm themselves with the information necessary to make educated choices and to make casting your vote a priority. Please visit the Shakopee Chamber website at shakopee.org to find out more information about the upcoming elections. Now I'd like to introduce Tyler Kistner, who's running for U.S. Representative for District 2. Tyler, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Tim, I appreciate you inviting me here. It's truly a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, born and raised Minnesotan, grew up over in the Champlin, Brooklyn Park area of the Twin Cities. That's where I met my high school sweetheart. After we graduated from the University of Minnesota, I commissioned as an officer in the Marine Corps, served 9 years active duty. I'm still in the Marine Reserves, but there I served predominantly in Marine Special Operations. I did 4 overseas tours, and during those tours, commanded over 500 personnel, both U.S. and partner force, as well as over 5 separate special operations programs, which totaled over $180 million in budget and assets, working with foreign dignitaries, ambassadors, working with partner force personnel, as well as U.S. elected officials and top senior generals. Before I transitioned out, I was honored to serve on the executive staff of all Marine Special Operations there. I got to do a bit of liaison work with Congress, working on national security issues, as well as working on some legislative matters in direct coordination on national security strategy. I moved back home with my wife. We have 2 kids. One, my daughter is 5, my son is 1. And we live in Prior Lake now, where I run a small business, including continuing to serve in the Marines in the Marine Reserves, helping out with recruiting efforts, which I'm not going to do on this podcast right now.
All right. Great. Thank you, Tyler. If you could write, sign, and pass 3 laws today, what would they be and why?
Oof, man, what could I do if I were the president? Well, when I get to Congress, big thing is just presenting bills that can actually get pushed forward to help with some of the issues that we're facing. The first thing that we need to address, it's something facing every American household, every American family, and every single business, not even just in Shakopee or Scott County, but across the country, and that's addressing inflation. We're going to address inflation by cutting back on this federal government spending. My opponent, Congresswoman Craig, has, over the last year and a half, signed on to 3 different bills that have spent almost $4 trillion of U.S. taxpayer money, which has only caused inflation to be the record highs that we've ever seen in the last 41 years. We really need to get back to fiscal conservatism. That's one of the first things that I'd like to do. Second one is definitely looking at ways we can continue to energize this economy. And the first thing we can do is start tapping back into our energy independence and really bringing that back to the greatest economy that we had 3 years ago when we were doing such things. Also, not even just tapping back into energy independence in this country, but bringing back energy or dependence on manufacturing and our own resources. You can go up to northern Minnesota. Why can't we tap into our own mining resources up in northern Minnesota? Yet we're going to child labor in China and other places, but we're continuing to ignore the American economy, the American business, and American manufacturing. When you start investing back into that, you're lowering the energy costs, which are already continuing to rise to record highs, but you're also looking to help shorten that supply chain because you're bringing the manufacturing, you're bringing the supply chain back to America, not so dependent on these foreign markets like foreign oil, foreign natural gas, but you're looking into our own country and America first. And then the last thing you have to do is look at that 2017 tax bill and find ways to improve on it. I think the thing we can do with that tax bill is definitely reach down to more tax breaks, more tax credits to smaller businesses to make sure that when they make a profit, they're able to keep that profit and invest it back into their own business to help this economy grow, help their business grow. With that, you'll address a lot of these issues we're facing in the economy, we're facing with inflation and the supply chain, but then also with that tax bill, looking for ways that we can cut Social Security tax because we're already paying into it. Why do we have to pay a second tax on that when we've already paid in? So those are the 3 things I'd like to do in Congress when I get there.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. Coming out of the pandemic, businesses are being affected by workforce shortages, supply chain issues, and inflation. What policies would you support to help businesses struggling with these issues?
I mean, talking to many businesses across the district, you're hearing the same thing as well as the data telling you such. 87% of businesses are saying that the labor shortage is one of the greatest issues that they're facing trying to grow their business or even trying to just make a profit. We can address the labor shortages by first helping look to make these public assistance programs that are configured to help assist those in need of gaining these skills, help get them back into the workforce with these necessary training requirements, as well as looking for incentives to get them back into the workforce, not finding more incentives to keep them away from it. One way you can also help businesses achieve this is looking for tax credits to provide for businesses that are looking to provide these type of skills to their employees or those that they're looking to hire on. Second one is we need to make America a place where it's the best, where we're bringing in the best and brightest from around the world. And that means not only just an accelerated immigration process, but also finding ways that we can allow our tax code to make sure that they can keep this money that they're actually earning here. And then the last one that we can do with this is making sure that we keep our manufacturing jobs in this country. We make sure we keep the wages in this country, because right now you're seeing a lot of businesses sending their business overseas, and that all is ultimately just decreasing the overall strength of the American economy when you start doing that. It's also increasing the strain that we have on the supply chain, which was definitely expounded upon once COVID hit, and you had these foreign supply chains where we weren't able to start getting the products back into this country to help our economy and help the small businesses. And then also, I think we also look at additional funding for trade certifications through the community college and technical colleges, and also finding ways to help give tax credit to businesses that are looking to provide that type of training to some of their employees, where you give them additional scholarships or grants for some of these certificates in trades like construction, manufacturing. I mean, one of the biggest ones that people definitely want to see is an increase in the trucking. I think these are all ways we can help address that labor shortage. When you look at inflation and kind of how the pandemic increased that, I'd like to say it was only increased because of government spending. Going back to the first response I gave, we increased government spending by $4 trillion in the last 2 years. We need to address inflation by cutting back on government spending and ensuring that we're investing back in the American economy, the American business, and American families. And then looking at the supply chain, stop having such a reliance on overseas markets and overseas supply chains. Start bringing back those manufacturing, bringing back resources back to America and energy dependence. That way we can rely more on what is already here and not so much on what's overseas, to include making sure we have 24-hour operations at the ports to make sure that the products from the ports are getting brought to the businesses and being able to be put into the market. I think those are all ways that we can address what the pandemic and definitely the Democrats in Washington have caused over the last 2 years.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. According to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, there are roughly 395 violent crimes for every 100,000 residents in 2021 in the 7-county metro region, which is a 24% increase over 2020 levels. What initiatives would you focus on at the federal level to help local communities reduce crime?
I mean, crime has been an issue that we've seen since 2020, and it's not starting to spread in the suburbs. It has spread to the suburbs. You already highlighted 24% increase in crime, but also another thing causing a lot of this is just the atmosphere and the culture around how we view our law enforcement. 35% increase on crime against law enforcement and police officers. How we address this issue is first making sure we don't follow polling to tell us when we need to stand with law enforcement, but ensuring we're always backing up law enforcement and helping provide that rhetoric to support our law enforcement officers. The defund the police rhetoric has really hurt law enforcement recruitment and retention, and also has helped just increase crime where people don't respect law and order. Our communities are literally being put into a crime wave, and families are even concerned just to send their children down the street to the park, let alone having them play outside in the backyard. We need to make sure we're working to continue to support our law enforcement with positive rhetoric, but then also finding means to help support them with the resources and funding necessary for recruitment, retention, training, and the resources to carry out their duties day in and day out. I did a ride-along with the Shakopee Police Department a few weeks back where I talk to officers who are on the ground day in, day out and hearing some of the issues that they're facing. As well, every single week I talk to law enforcement officers to really understand what is it that they need to help best keep our communities safe. And they all say the same thing. Just continue to support us and don't let polling tell you when you need to stand behind law enforcement officers, but also from the federal government level. You can support with grants and funds to help with that recruitment and retention, as well as one of the other issues law enforcement officers are facing on the streets is they can arrest somebody, but because of the failed prosecution in this state, you're putting those criminals back on the street within a day or a week. It's about time we start supporting our prosecutors as well to make sure that they have the resources necessary to keep criminals behind bars and not back on the street. I think all those things in totality will definitely help reduce the crime, but it does start with that positive rhetoric with always standing with your law enforcement.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. What would your plan be to help with healthcare costs for businesses and families?
What you're really trying to ask is how I can fix the world in a day. I mean, when you look at healthcare, this is a multifaceted, complex issue. My mom is a senior accountant at one of the hospitals in the state. Definitely worked hard to get herself into that position, and she talks to me all the time with the issues they're facing in healthcare. And it's not just health insurance. When we talk about healthcare, everyone always just assumes you're talking about health insurance. This is a multifaceted problem where you're talking about medical technology, you're talking about healthcare, the care being provided, and you're also talking about pharmaceuticals. So many things go into this to create the problems we're having, to include when Obamacare increased people on Medicaid to the record highs that we've ever had, and we only continue to increase. When you look at Medicaid, that's 49 cents to the dollar you're paying for care being provided. Well, how are you offsetting that? You're offsetting it with those who are paying into private insurance. And that's why private insurance holders have their premiums and deductibles going so high. I think the first thing we need to do is look at how we can try to bring down the cost of medical technology and pharmaceuticals. I think one way we can address that is definitely opening up the market, allowing pharmaceutical companies from Europe to get into this market so that you create greater competition. And then that way you'll start decreasing the cost on some of these products or pharmaceuticals that you're paying for, because there's greater competition and there's more options for people to choose. When you look at health insurance, I mean, the rising cost of health insurance has been an issue that we've been facing for the past 10 years. Minnesota had one of the best state-run health insurance options this entire country's ever seen. Obamacare destroyed that. I think if we look for ways to help create greater transparency in the care being provided, as well as the cost of what someone's going to be paying for, that gives them greater options of where they can get the best care and the best price for what care that they want, to include making sure that this is a patient-first option where the patient gets to decide. I think another means is getting rid of these artificial state lines for health insurance and opening it up, that you can have health insurance in one state as much as you can in another. We can do it with car insurance. I have USAA. You can even do it with Geico. You can get car insurance in Minnesota as easily as you can get in California or North Carolina. But why can't we do that with our health insurance? I think our health insurance needs to get back to being portable, affordable, and patient first. And I think that's how we can address a lot of the issues we're facing in the healthcare, not even industry, just healthcare writ large.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. With the continued infrastructure development needs in Shakopee and Scott County, what would your plan be at the federal level to assist with these ongoing projects?
Infrastructure is one of those critical responsibilities of the federal government. Critical infrastructure is needed to really kind of help create economic growth and prosperity for businesses. And so it's something that I see, yes, is a need for the federal government to continue to spend on. We cannot ignore this. If you look across Shakopee, if you look across Scott County, even the state and the country, you see our infrastructure continue to deteriorate and become old and wearing away. We need to start investing in our infrastructure to make sure it's keeping up with the 21st century, because we are the greatest country on the earth. We need to continue to show that with the infrastructure we're providing for our economy and for our businesses that are trying to thrive within this economy. But infrastructure means just that. It's roads, it's bridges, and it's railways. When you look at the Democrats' $3 trillion infrastructure plan, it included pretty much the predominance of it a Green New Deal initiative that had nothing to do with infrastructure, as well as throwing in childcare, tax increases, and the likes that only was just more of a burden on people and not really looking to improve infrastructure. But what we need to do to enhance our infrastructure is not even just investing in infrastructure, but also finding ways to make sure that we're spending our money wisely. One of the biggest issues that I talk with MnDOT all the time is just the approval process it takes to get a project through and the extra cost that you go through with a lot of those approval processes. If you can look to make them more efficient and more effective, that would definitely create less lead times you need to get a project finished, as well as just how quickly you can get a project completed from the amount the funding is available to the time the project is complete. I mean, one of the greatest things that holds back a lot of these projects is the NEPA environmental review process. If we can find a way to streamline that and see what that looks like to make sure it's still effective but efficient at getting those projects done and on time and not delaying the process, you can really cut down on those costs and make sure that your tax dollars are going to the most efficient and the best infrastructure projects available. And that will kind of create a lot more money to provide for other infrastructure needs. Another big one is rural broadband. As we saw through the pandemic, more people are starting to work from either home or businesses are starting to spread out of the cities and go to the suburbs. That creates a greater demand of rural broadband in places like the 2nd Congressional District, which is predominantly suburbs and exurbs, and they don't have a lot of that rural broadband available. I think we need to continue to invest in that so that we are connecting all of our businesses across the state so that they can continue to thrive, flourish, and create that profit and tap into what resources we have in the infrastructure that we're continuing to make.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. As the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce, we are unapologetically pro-Shakopee and pro-business. How is your agenda pro-business?
I mean, the greatest way you can be pro-business is always find a way to just listen and be a resource to those businesses. And what I'm hearing as I'm listening to these businesses, the greatest way you can be pro-business is stop the government spending. Make sure you're not increasing inflation. When you look at the Democratic-controlled Washington the last 2 years, they've increased inflation because they've increased government spending by $4 trillion. How can you be pro-business? Make sure you take away a lot of that regulation you're starting to put on businesses. Find ways you can give them greater tax credits and tax breaks so that when a business wants to invest in their own business, they actually have the money and the resources necessary to do so. I've been endorsed by NFIB, which is the largest small business organization in the entire country, because they understand fiscal conservatism helps small business. And we have to decrease inflation. We have to tap back into our own natural resources here in this country and make sure that we're looking to create manufacturing jobs here in America and not overseas, as well as creating greater competition in this country by ensuring we're focusing on America first. That's how you continue to remain small business, and that's exactly what I want to be.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. Now I'd like to give you the opportunity to give your closing statement message to the voters.
I mean, it's plain and simple. When you look at the last 2 years as a small business, have you been able to thrive and flourish, or have you been trying to inch towards just surviving day by day? It's all about how you can best look to grow your business. And that's exactly what I want to be. I want to be a resource to small businesses. I want to be a resource to this country and a resource to the constituents of the 2nd Congressional District. It's not about how we can thrive ourselves. It's how we can make sure we have greater prosperity, not just for my children, but for your children, our grandchildren, and our future generations. Making sure we invest in American families, we lower the cost of living by decreasing and reining in government spending, and we start looking at investing in American energy independence, American resources, and American manufacturing so that we thrive to make this country one of the greatest economies on the earth and ensure that we are putting small businesses first and making sure that we always look to create greater prosperity for our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. As a reminder, the views expressed in these interviews are those of the candidates, not those of the Chamber and Visitors Bureau. The Chamber is sponsoring these events as a service to the community and has gone to great lengths to ensure the objectivity. The Chamber does not endorse any candidate, but seeks to provide you, the citizens and voters of Shakopee, with the information you need to make an informed choice. The Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau extends a sincere thank you to the candidates. Thank you again, Tyler.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time and your service to our community by running for office. You're performing an important service to us all. Again, thank you for joining us for this edition of Meet the Candidates 2022. Please join us September 29th at River Valley Church for our candidate forum. Please visit the Shakopee Chamber website at shakopee.org for more information. Thank you. Thanks, Tyler.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, everybody.